Hi everyone, I want to do a quick video about this new distribution that I found called Calam-Arch that I'm really in love with. My name is Michael Mullen and let's get started. So a quick announcement, I'm putting up all of my videos on Odyssey. So if you go to https://odyssey.com/@MichaelMullen, you'll be able to watch my videos in freedom format. And here is my webpage. You can see that all my videos are up there. And if you hurry now, you can be one of the first 5 followers on my channel. So act fast. So why am I using Calam-Arch? I love Fedora and I've been using Fedora for a long time. But the problem with Fedora is there's actually 2 problems with Fedora. The first problem is that I have to do a distribution upgrade every 6 months in order to stay up to date with Fedora. And every time that I seem to do that, something breaks and I end up having to nuke and pave. Now the second problem I have with Fedora is that it installs a bunch of applications that I don't want, but I can't get rid of. And the most egregious example of that is cheese, which seems to be needed by some other necessary package for GNOME. And anyways, I couldn't get rid of it. It's quite annoying. And I don't like that. Arch solves both of those problems for me. So the first thing is that Arch can be used for basically ever. I use Arch on my NAS downstairs, and I've been using it for 8 years. I've had one major problem with it, but one major problem in 8 years is a small price to pay for not having to reinstall the operating system every 6 months. 8 years is getting up into the area of not necessarily reliability, that's not the word I'm looking for, but longevity that CentOS has. And I expect that machine to go for more than 10 years, which is what CentOS 7 promised. Now, of course, it'll beat CentOS 8, which is what, 1-2 years? But yeah, this Arch install on my NAS is going to last forever. There's no reason not to keep using it. And I would like that for my desktop as well. The second thing is that Arch will solve for me is that Arch doesn't need you to install a bunch of unnecessary packages. I don't need to install cheese on it. The problem with Arch is that the install process is a little bit involved. It's not that I can't do it. It's that it takes me about 20 minutes, 30 minutes to do it. But I always screw up UEFI installs. So it doesn't take me 30 minutes to do the install. It takes me 30 minutes to do the install incorrectly, and then 30 more minutes to do the install correctly. So it takes me about an hour to get myself up to where I want. And that's kind of annoying. So I was watching a bunch of videos on YouTube, and I came upon a video by Old Tech Bloke, where he introduced me to Calam-Arch. Now, Calam-Arch is basically just a graphical installer for Arch, and it will take care of that UEFI stuff. So it does everything that I want. It's quick. It does the UEFI. So great. Let's go ahead with it. But there are a few problems. Now, if you want to do a really, really minimal install of Calam-Arch, you have to make sure that you pick the correct packages in the GUI installer. You can incorrectly not pick things, and then the install process will fail on you. So it doesn't have the correct kind of enforced defaults. Also, Calam-Arch will also install a few packages that I don't want, such as PAMAC AUR. It's not that these packages can't be removed afterwards, but they are installed by default without you selecting them, and you have to kind of remove them afterwards. But of course you can remove them afterwards, and it's not a big deal. There's not too many of them. Now, the most major problem I have with Calam-Arch is that the way that it handles the automatic partitioning, it's either Calam-Arch's way or your way, and there's no in between. One of the really great things about Fedora, CentOS, Red Hat is that the file system partitioning can be semi-automated. So you can say, okay, Fedora, I want you to set up the partitions, but I'm going to tweak them a little bit. Instead of doing an LVM2 install, I would like to do normal file system installs, but with Btrfs, or a normal file system install, but with XFS or ext4, stuff like that. And it'll handle the sizing. It'll handle making sure that you or I have got the correct partitions, which matters when you're doing a UEFI install, but you're able to change things a little bit. But if, unfortunately, with Calam-Arch, it's either Calam-Arch's way or your way, and there's no in between. But let me show you why I really love Calam-Arch, and that's because so long as you know these things in the back of your mind, it's really, really easy to get yourself up and running on a really minimal GNOME install. And let me show you what I mean by that. So let us open up a terminal here, and I'm going to do the install all on a virtual machine here, but you'll see how easy it is. I am running Calam-Arch on the machine that you're looking at right now, so it's not more involved than what I'm about to show you. So let's get started by doing a QEMU create of an Arch hard drive that we will install Calam-Arch into. And then we will run the installer process, get ourselves into a full screen here, and boot up into the installer. So it's given me a graphical user interface, and to start up the installation procedure, you just click on this Arch icon. You click next, 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 and get yourself into the partitioning section. This is what I was talking about before. You can either do its way, select erase disk, and go to next. Of course, now you can't change anything. Or you can select manual partitioning and do everything on your own here. So I'm just going to get it to do it for me. Unfortunately, it installs with ext4, and I would like to use Btrfs, but we can't get everything. Now, I don't want all of this stuff that you see on the screen here. I don't want Calam-Arch to do for me. All I want from Calam-Arch is to get me into a first boot scenario where I start building up everything on my own. In fact, not only do I not want any of these desktops, I don't want it to install my graphics drivers or anything like that. I don't even want it to do these common packages. So I'm going to deselect that, and I'm going to just select the packages that I know I will want. So I will want the base devel. I will want the Intel Ucode. I will want DH client. I will want grub. Now you see here there's a few times where packages are duplicated. Don't worry about it. You just need to select one of the multiples here. So I'm probably going to want htop, so let's just get that installed immediately. I am going to want, if I was doing a UEFI install, I would need these EFI boot manager, and there's another EFI package below that you need to select. So I'm going to select that, even though for installing onto my virtual machine here, I don't need them. I'll do this in case you guys are following along. So there's the Ucode stuff that I want. Just in case, I'll get wget. I will want vim, EFI tools, and that's it. So I'll click next here and let it do its thing. Oh, but it's bringing up us a prompt to set up your user, to set up your non-root user. Now, normally in a normal Arch install, you do this after first install. I kind of like it that it's going to do setting up a user with this nice graphical user interface. So I kind of like this, but it's not absolutely necessary. And I'm going to use the same password for my root user. So start, and let's get the install going. Now, the nice thing that it's going to do for you here is that there's this little icon that you can double click, and it will show you what it's doing during the installation procedure. Now, while it's doing this, I'd like to point out that it is installing things that I don't want. It is installing RiserFS, it's installing Nano, XFS progs, F2FS tools. I'm not sure what the snail is. It's installing LVM2. I might not want sudo, things like that. There's a bunch of stuff that's being installed exterm that I don't want. But it's not a huge deal because there's not too many things here. So we'll let it finish up its installation process, and I will get back to you after it has finished. So it's all finished now. It took a minute, less than 2 minutes, and we are ready to go through our first boot into Arch. So I'm going to stop that. We'll click done, and I will log out, shut down, and I'll start up the Calam-Arch without that CD-ROM. Get us back into full screen mode. And one of the first things that you'll notice if you're following along with me is that you don't have a network setup. So I like to use DH client for my first boot up because it's as easy as doing a DH client. So I now have an IP address that will allow me to continue on with installing all the necessary utilities to get me up to a GNOME shell. So let's do a sudo pacman, and just to show you why you want to use Arch, it's that immediately all your packages are all up to date right off the bat. So let's keep moving though. So we want to install Xorg server. If we were running NVIDIA, we would install an NVIDIA graphics driver here, but because I'm on a virtual machine, I'm not going to do that. And we're going to install GNOME. Now, it's listed off a whole bunch of packages here that it would install by default, but because it's Arch, we don't have to install all of these things. The things that I want to install are GDM. I want to install GNOME backgrounds. I want to install GNOME Control Center, GNOME Documents, GNOME Font Viewer. I want to install GNOME Screenshot, GNOME Session, GNOME Settings Daemon, GNOME Shell. I want to install GNOME Terminal. I want to install Mutter and Nautilus and XDG user DIRS GTK. And say yes to that and let it install its stuff. So there are a few more things that I need in order to use StartX to start up X11 with GNOME rather than using GDM. So I'd like to show that stuff to you as well. So I need to sudo pacman install xorg xinit. And because I know I will immediately want this, I want to install Firefox. All right. Now, what you need to do in order to do an Xorg startx is we're going to create this file called xinitrc, and only for this first time, we're going to use exec gnome session. Now, there are a few more things that we want to put in this file later, but for right now, this is all that we're going to do. And now we are going to startx. And we're up and running with GNOME. Now, you'll notice that things are pretty slow here. So in order to fix that, I'm going to go to the Arch Wiki for GNOME. And I am going to get the proper setup for an Xorg session. And that is doing these 2 lines before that exec gnome session. So I'm going to copy them. Start up a terminal. And paste those lines in. And now I am going to log out of X here and restart it. So now you'll notice that it's much faster and much more smooth. So we've got ourselves GNOME up and going. But let's say the one thing that we don't have is that we don't have an automatic network connection. We have to do the sudo dh client here. So let's solve that issue by looking inside of the Arch Wiki for systemd networkd. And because I use wired Ethernet, all I need to do is copy this stuff, and I will again start up a GNOME terminal. And zoom in so people can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to create this etc systemd network 20 wired.network. And I'm going to paste in that stuff, but there is something else that I need to do here. I have to find out what my Ethernet name is, and it is ENS3. So I am going to replace this ENP1S with ENS3. And then I am going to system control enable systemd networkd. And I am also going to start up the GDM graphical user interface, so I don't have to do startx all the time. So I believe I'm going to run into a problem here, but let's solve it as well. So system control enable GDM, and it says that it's already got a symlink to LightDM. LightDM is not installed, so let's do sudo system control disable display manager. All right. So like I was saying at the start, there's a bunch of applications that are installed by default by Calam-Arch that we don't want. So let's get rid of those. Actually, let's enable GDM too. Okay. So let's get rid of those applications that we don't want. In order to do that, we do a sudo pacman-QE, and we see this list of stuff. Now, I don't want RiserFS. I don't want LVM2. And I don't want F2FS tools. So let me start up a new shell here. Zoom it in. And we will sudo pacman RNS for nano RiserFS. Where was that? Where was RiserFS? RiserFS progs. LVM2. What else is here that I don't want? Xterm. Now that came with Xorg server, but I still don't want it. It wasn't automatic. Well, it was automatically installed by Calam-Arch, and it's also got Pamac AUR that I want to get rid of. So let's get rid of those. Doesn't want to get rid of that for me. So let's get rid of libblock dev. Okay, no, we can't do that. Okay, so there is a few things that it needs that it's going to force you to have. All right, so we got rid of a bunch of things that we don't want here. The last step that we should do in order to have a nice Arch experience is we should install Yay. So, Yay AUR. So what we're going to do is copy this, and we will sudo pacman-s git and git clone. And make pkg-si. All right, so we have the things that we want. Let's do a reboot of the virtual machine to make sure everything is working correctly. So it booted us into a nice GDM automatically. And we open up the terminal and do an IPA. You can see that we've already got our network connection. So, not quite sure how long that took us, but it wasn't very long at all. And it got us all the way up to ready where we can start kind of tweaking our user interface and getting the specific applications that we want to be running. Yeah, so Calam-Arch makes an Arch install really nice and easy. And I really love this distribution, or this installer of Arch. So yeah, I hope you have learned something about Linux. I hope you have learned something about Arch, and have yourself a good evening or a good morning or a good afternoon.